Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how you can make your own perfect kick drum all within Ableton Live using the operator instrument and some other dynamic effects, all native within Ableton. Let's get in. This is what we're going to create today. As I scroll across the effects chain here, it may look a little bit extensive and complicated, but don't worry at all. They're all Ableton native plugins, and I'm going to take you through step by step how we can get some really good, thick, big, massive, and all the other great words that we associate with good sounding kicks. I'm also going to show you how you can macro control a couple of knobs here to very simply and very effectively change the characteristic of your kick. So make sure it sits in your mix and style of music, very simply. Alright, let's take a look at how to create it. The building blocks of this kick is going to come from the operator instrument. Just going to drop a new one on our channel here. Operator has 4 oscillators here, A, B, C and D, and we're only going to use A and B. So we're going to switch off C and D, and we also want to make sure that the algorithm here is the first one. Without getting too complicated, this just means that when they're on top of each other like this, each oscillator can be modulated by the one above it and each other. And this will help us create some really interesting sound. A couple of things to check before we start manipulating the sound. So we've got oscillator A selected, and the wave is a sine wave, so make sure that's the one we have. Also make sure that the phase has retrigger enabled. Okay, if we have this disabled, the oscillator is free running and it may not sound the same every kick, which could create phasing issues. I'm going to enable the envelope section here. The envelope is where we're going to shape the sound. To get the basic kick sound going, what I'm going to do is click here to enable a fixed frequency. This is so any key that we play on the keyboard will play a fixed sound every time, and the oscillator is not going to respond to any different note pitch. Frequency we want to start off is around about 50 to 60 Hertz, so let's say 55 roughly. That'll do. Let's see what this sounds like on its own. So we've got a nice low tone, but there's not much body, there's not much attack to it, so that's how we're going to change things in the envelope. Starting with the attack, that can stay on 0 because we want a sharp transient at the beginning of the kick. We don't need to use the filter setting, so we'll disable that. Next thing to do is enable the pitch envelope. This is going to make a difference to the sound quite noticeably. If we turn the pitch envelope up all the way to 100%, no change yet, but that's because we haven't adjusted the peak. We're going to increase the peak. And the higher we go, you can see the bigger the tone has to drop. After the initial attack, which happens very quickly, the note then has to drop from 43 all the way down to 12. Okay, now that's obviously quite extreme, so we're going to adjust this. Let's bring this down to about 24. So now we have a little bit of movement on that initial sound. So right after that peak sound dropping down, we have the decay, and it's quite a long time at the moment, so let's decrease this. There we go, so it makes it a lot more punchy. Say there for now, and we're going to adjust these later on to cater for your own individual needs. Just going to drop the pitch envelope a little bit. About 80%. Means it sounds good, it's not too extreme. Going back to the envelope of the oscillator, this section A here. As soon as I let go of the key, the release is quite short and there's not much tail to the sound, so let's increase that a little bit. That there sounds good. Another key thing to do is to bring the sustain all the way down to 0. That's so that if we hold the key down, it doesn't just continue with the sound. So I'll show you what I mean. You know, in some cases, maybe that could be useful, but we don't want it, so we're going to drop it all the way down. So now as I release the key, so now as I hold down the key, it tails off very quickly. So we're really starting to get a familiar kick sound now. It's got some quite good punch to it. Just going to increase the volume a little bit now. Great. Okay, let's see how we can colour this sound even more. A bit more of a subtle addition to the sound now. With oscillator B selected, we're just going to leave everything as is and increase the level. And as we turn it up, it modulates oscillator A and creates a kind of crazy sound. Really changes the timbre as you increase it. So I think just to give it a little bit of colour, a little bit of personality, around about 35. Let's hear it without and with. Maybe that's a bit much. Let's drop it down. Maybe 45, minus 45. It's very subtle, but it'll be slightly more apparent when we start to add compression, EQ, and other dynamic effects. Let's get to that now. Okay, first effect we're going to put in is the dynamic tube. I'm actually going to use a preset, warm tube. Let's double click on that. That adds it along. There's a very subtle difference if I mute it, without, and now with. Just gives it a little bit more character, a bit more warmth. Next up, we're going to add a compressor. Just looking for a little bit of gain reduction here. There we go. And that's just going to even out the sound a little more. Next up, I'm going to add some saturation. I love this plugin and I really like the A Bit Warmer preset. We're going to use that. No need to make any adjustments. Other than we're going to bring the level down, as that does add to the gain a bit. And we want to make sure we're not peaking on the master channel. Great. Okay, now another compressor, this time a glue compressor. And what I'm going to do is adjust the settings to make it a very, very hard compression. Zero attack, quite high release, full ratio. I'm going to turn the makeup gain all the way up and bring the threshold all the way down to about there. And I'm going to disable the sound for a second so that it's not affected. And this is known, and what we're going to do, we're going to bleed some of this compression into our overall sound. And this is known as New York or parallel compression. So we're keeping the elements of our original sound and we're blending in with this very hard compressed sound. And it just gives it a nice thick full sound. So let's see what this sounds like. Without and with. So it really gives it some great weight. The final part of our effects chain, I'm going to add on some Multiband Dynamics, and this is a tip I learnt from those great guys at Point Blank London. So check out their videos for some excellent tips. So looking for Multiband Dynamics, let's add that on. And the reason I'm putting this on is so that we can split the sounds, the high, the low and the mids of the kick, and we can affect each parts of those individually to really customize and improve the overall sound. First thing we need to do is, with the Multiband Dynamics highlighted, is press Command and G, and that creates an audio effects rack. Opening up the chain list, we're going to first of all click on the first one. Let's rename it straight away to low. And then all we want to do is solo the low aspect of the sound. And we're going to duplicate this, rename the second one mid. And likewise, we're just going to solo the mid. And one more time, duplicate, rename high, and just solo the high. So now it sounds the same, except we have these three individual elements of the kick which we can manipulate individually, which is great and really flexible. Starting with the low chain, let's first of all drop on a utility plugin. I'm going to drag this just after it. Note that I dropped it in directly after the Multiband Dynamic plugin. That's so that it's only affecting this chain. Alternatively, actually, let's undo that, and what I could do to make it more clear is drop the utility just over the chain that we want to put it on. Okay, so what we're going to do is bring the width all the way down to 0. That's so that the low elements of the kit remain completely mono. We don't get any left and right signal with some low muddiness. And secondly, I'm going to drop on a very basic compressor. Oops, see, I accidentally am affecting everything here, so let's drag it in so it's only on the low section for now. I'm just going to solo the actual low sound. And let's drop the threshold and get a little bit of great gain reduction going on. There we go, just some very mild compression. Okay, and the mid section now. The mid section of a kick sound, let's just solo it for now, can quite often get a little bit muddy, a little bit distorted. So what we're going to do is we're going to add on an auto filter, dropping it right after here. We're going to choose the notch filter, and we're going to take out around about the 250 Hertz area, around about here. Take out that muddy sound. Okay, let's just see what that is without and with. See, it just kind of takes out some of the roughness there. Let's maybe increase the band a little. Okay, just hear it in context now. What we'll do is we'll unsolo. Great sound. Okay, let's take the filter off. So you can really adjust it to taste. Usually around the 200, 250 mark is where some of that unwanted noise happens. Okay, let's also add on a compressor. Just smoothing out this overall sound there. Okay, and moving on to the high section. Let's just solo it for now. What we want to do is give this very light high tones a little bit of aggression, so we're going to add on some light overdrive. I'm going to leave the default settings here, just gives it a nice little bit of drive there. Just realised I need to drop it in the right section. There we go. Okay, that's so it doesn't overdrive everything else. And finally, what we're going to do is put a little bit of reverb just on the high section, and that's going to give the whole kick a little bit of reflection. It's very, very subtle, but when I disable it and re-enable it, you should hear the difference. Okay, so what I want to do actually is now use a Max for Live reverb. There's a plugin that I really like. It's called the Convolution Reverb Pro. So let's drop this right after the overdrive. Takes a little longer to load, and we're going to go for made for drums, nice and straightforward here, and we're going to use the kick chamber setting. Okay, now you can hear that's obviously quite a lot, so we're going to drop the dry wet signal all the way down just to a few percent, so it's there but it's not too noticeable. And also on the EQ section, let's open that up. I'm just going to put on a low pass filter here just to get rid of some of those hissy upper levels, yet still retaining the nice little spring reverb there. Okay, right, let's hear this all together now. Can you just hear that excellent piece of reverb at the end? It really does transform the whole sound. So let's just take that off. You can also hear the overdrive's given a nice little bite to the top end. And now with the reverb back on, just gives a great little bit of presence. It's very subtle but really effective, I think. Okay, next bit is setting up the macros. Let's tidy everything up here. So what I'm going to do is highlight one of the devices, then Command A to select them all, and then Command G to group them all together into a brand new effects rack. Oh, sorry, instrument rack. Let's open up the macro section, and the two bits that I want to assign to macro knobs to make it a really tweakable sound is the pitch envelope decay time. So if we highlight that, right click, map to macro 1, and then we can click on this, rename it, Command R, and this, I don't know, you can say the body of the sound, and then it's hard to describe really. I suppose it's the characteristic of the kick that you adjust here. So I'm just going to turn that reverb down a couple more %. About 5 is a good compromise. And then secondly, for the second macro, we're going to map the decay time of the main oscillator. Right click, map to macro 2. Let's rename this. This is kind of the length of the sound. Now, I think probably, between 1 and 60 milliseconds you're never going to use as a kick. So what you could do here is, with this highlighted, is click on map, and then you can see here we can adjust the minimum and maximum amounts that the knob will turn between. So let's turn this up to 60 milliseconds, and then I think maybe about 6 seconds, 6-7 seconds, there we go, is the max that you would probably ever use. So obviously you can adjust that to your own likings, but I think that's a good variation there. Let's come out of map mode, and now you can see we're limited to the more realistic amounts. There we go. So just adjusting these two now, you can come up with a whole variety of really interesting different kicks for different reasons. Be sure to be able to tweak any number of parameters with all the effects that we've added to make it really sit well in the mix and adjust to how you like. There you go. So you can save that instrument rack. Why not? Let's do that now. Let's save it as Demigods Kicks, so that it's good to go at any time. Great stuff. Let's hear that in context with a simple little beat. And then make the adjustments on the fly. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that useful. Please subscribe, and thanks to you guys for subscribing so far. Over 100 now. Can't believe it. I know that sounds like nothing in terms of YouTube, but that's really important for me. It really makes me want to keep making these videos, so give it a thumbs up, and tell me about your kick drums and what techniques you use. I'd love to know. Put it in the comments below, and I always reply. So cheers, and I'll see you next time.